Hello and welcome to today's almost daily devotional. We are in the prophet Amos, and we're going to start in the 7th chapter on the 7th verse, and it goes like this. This is what the Lord showed me. The Lord was standing by a wall with a plumb line in his hand. The Lord said to me, Amos, what do you see? A plumb line, I said. Then the Lord said, See, I am setting a plumb line in the middle of my people Israel. I will never again forgive them. The shrines of Isaac will be made desolate, and the holy places of Israel will be laid waste. And I will rise against the house of Jeroboam with the sword. Then Amaziah, the priest of Bethel, reported to Israel's king Jeroboam, Amos has plotted against you within the house of Israel. The land isn't able to cope with everything that he is saying. Amos has said, Jeroboam will die by the sword, and Israel will be forced out of its land. Amaziah said to Amos, You who see things, go. Run away to the land of Judah, eat your bread there, and prophesy there. But never again prophesy at Bethel, for it is the king's holy place and his royal house. Now, this week's passages don't scream Advent. They don't scream Christmas season to us. They don't tell us stories of Christmas trees with lights on them or pretty angels with wings or things like that. They're darker visions of the future that God has for God's people in the land of Israel. And Amos is no different than that. Amos's vision in this passage is not a pleasant one. It's not an exciting one. It's not a joyful one. And yet it acknowledges that there is a truth here. That Advent isn't necessarily about joy. That Christmas isn't about a pure light, a pure brightness, that is not just all peace and love and hope and joy, as much as I wish it were. That there's a truth and a reality to our world, that it's broken, and the brokenness of the world doesn't stop just because it's Christmas time. We don't become better people during Advent. We don't live in a different society than we did 2 weeks ago. We don't live in a different world than we did 2 weeks ago. And we're reminded of that constantly, every day. And so when we try to put into contrast our expectations for the season and what the reality of the season is, it can create all sorts of tension. It can create all sorts of difficulty for us. And the reality is that Advent is just as messy as every other time, every other moment of the year. And that, believe it or not, is the good news. You see, Amos was a prophet. He was a farmer. He wasn't trained. He wasn't called to anything from childhood. He wasn't part of the priestly line. He was a farmer. And he was sent with a message of justice and righteousness and truth. And people didn't like it. People didn't want to hear the truth. It was difficult. It was challenging. It was hard to hear. And so when we paper over our feelings of negativity, when we paper over our hurt, when we pretend like it doesn't exist because it's Christmas or because it's our birthday or because, we're supposed to be feeling something different, then that's denying the reality of what's going on. And it's preventing us from experiencing the grace that God has for us. When we try to block it out, we pretend it doesn't exist or shade it or try to make it happier than it is, then we miss out on God's grace, God's true message of the season, which is, I come at night with a light. I come in the midst of this chaos. I come in the midst of this truth that's hard to hear, and I am with you. My hand is there, and you may be a farmer, or you may be a state senator, or you may be a mother, or you may be a doctor, or whatever you are. The truth of your life is true. And it's chaos sometimes, and it's hard times, and it's hard words sometimes. But I'm the light in the midst of that. And so don't ignore it. Don't pretend it doesn't happen. Find the truth in that. And find God in that. And that is the good news of the gospel.